Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Molehill podcast. For all the people who are watching on YouTube, you have a little bit of the Xbox showcase running in the background just to fill the void. But this is primarily a podcast, so it's about what you are listening to, not what you are watching. And this is the very first episode, by the way, for all the people who want to watch and listen to the ad-free version of this. You better check out patreon.com/ChaosMole. This is where this will end up immediately after we are done. So if you are a Patreon supporter, then you will get the ad-free version there. And then after a few hours, it will also come up on other platforms like Spotify, Apple, you know the drill. Like everywhere where you can listen to podcasts too. And yeah, they would just take a bit depending on like how quickly those services are. It's pretty simple. But again, the ad-free version will be on patreon.com/ChaosMole. And this is the very first episode of hopefully many to come. And if you're wondering and you're watching this right now, what happened to your lip? So I got in a fight with an 8-year-old, and you never really like realize how quick those 8-year-olds are, right? Like if they start swinging, you are just getting it. Like you cannot even react. Like I am 34 years old, right? Like I cannot even react that fast. No. I wish there would be an interesting story how that happened, but unfortunately the only thing which happened is I cut myself by shaving. Yeah, that's what happened. It's pretty boring, I know. But yeah, so this is the first Molehill podcast episode. There will be also the Mole Hall of Fame episode coming later this month. If you are a supporter for me on Patreon, you will also get that episode in early access. Yes, even podcasts now have early access. But no, seriously, you will get access to my Mole Hall of Fame episode nearly 2 weeks earlier. Yep, that's quite a bit. And if you're wondering, okay, well, what are you talking about there? Well, the answer is I would just talk about games which are really important to me and which have been basically shaped my feelings about video games, and I still see them as masterpieces, even sometimes 20 years later, and they still hold up, or at least in my perspective they do. So yeah, that is actually something I will do, and that is coming out ad-free, of course, on my Patreon about 2 weeks earlier, a week to 2 weeks. And well, you will still get the Mole Hall of Fame episode, but just later and also not ad-free. So that's something to consider. If you're also supporting the highest tier on Patreon, you can also join the Molehill Watchtower, where you can basically choose topics for the podcast or even some of the games I will talk about in the Mole Hall of Fame. So you can directly like interact with me, and there will also be some posts sometimes here and there. So keep an eye out on my Patreon at patreon.com/ChaosMole. And welcome in, folks, for everyone who is joining us here for the recording. Welcome in. And yeah, wow. Let's start the podcast now that we have like all that out of the way. What do we get here? Well, the first part will be us mostly talking about the gaming industry and what is going on there, gaming news, maybe some trailers, some announcements, everything gaming related, and what has happened in a week. Then, after that, we will go in our first Molehill main topic. I want to have a topic every week where I basically unravel the gaming industry. I have been working in the gaming industry now for over 12 years. I started out as a gaming journalist, and if you're like, weird, I have never heard about you in the gaming journalist scene. Yeah, I'm not a Jeff Grubb or whatever, Jason Schreier, especially because I have mostly written for German publications because, well, I am German. And yeah, so you you might have never heard of me, and that's fine. Cannot change that. But that's what I have been doing first. Then I switched over to become a community manager for Black Desert Online. Then I switched over to being a consultant at Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. It's very important to mention that. And then I became basically a content creator on Mixer. Was doing that for a while. Was doing really, really well. And yeah, now I'm just a content creator because, as you maybe know, Mixer is dead. So rest in peace there. And yeah, I still pretty much have seen behind the curtain of the gaming industry. Still have my connections here and there to some developers and some people working in the scene and getting some information here and there. I'm just not writing articles anymore because, to be honest, if there's one thing I really hated about being a gaming journalist, it was the writing. And, well, as a journalist, that's a bit problematic because, believe it or not, most of the time you have to write articles, you have to write news. It's writing, writing, writing. And I always hated that. I hate writing. I'm more the talkative person than the writer. So, yeah, that was always a bit of a problem for me. But still doing it, still loving it. And that's why I feel kind of confident to talk about the gaming industry and what is happening there. Of course, not about all topics. Like, the gaming industry is huge. People always like to compare basically one topic they have knowledge about with others. And it's like, nah, that's not really how it works. Like, gaming development is a very diverse area, and things can be vastly different. So, yeah, I was always a believer of, if you don't know what you were talking about, shut the hell up, right? Just shut the hell up, and that's normally how I handle things. But yeah, so long story short, we will then have a pretty big topic we're talking about, and this week it's about fake exclusivity. And if you think, wait, what? How is that working? Well, we will talk about that a little bit later, and I will showcase to you exactly what that means and why that is such a big problem. And everyone is doing it. That's the worst part. Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, it doesn't matter. Everyone is doing it, and it becomes pretty annoying and also pretty confusing. But again, we will talk about that later when we are getting to the topic. Let's talk about some gaming stuff here first. And the first thing is clearly E3, not E3, Summer Game Fest. That happened in the last 7 days. Yeah, I think it was about 7 days. And we had some great announcements, and we had also like a lot of boring stuff. It was a lot. It was a lot to take in. Like, one of the most boring things was clearly the PC gaming show. Like, oh my god, the PC gaming show was just advertisements over advertisements, bad puns, and mostly boring trailers. I think there were like 3 trailers in a 2-hour presentation, which kind of interest me, and that was it. But do not watch the PC gaming show. Don't try to watch a VOD or something like that. It is a waste of a time. We also had the Xbox showcase, which you were seeing here in the background, and man, they had some big announcements there. Very interesting that everything they basically showcased will come out in 12 months. I saw a lot of people having like a hot take on some of the announcements, that they were not like the biggest and most groundbreaking. And it's like, yeah, but you got announcements from games which are actually coming out in a year, right? Like, how many games can say that nowadays when they're getting announced? We have so many games which are just getting announced 2 years, sometimes 3 years or even longer before the release. Then they change drastically And then you have to basically start from the beginning anyways. So I kinda missed like the big, oh my god, look at this, what is coming? Sure. But at least I know that those games will actually come out. And I don't have to forget about them. Like, that's the problem we have in the gaming industry nowadays, right? It's this, we have so many games coming out on a weekly basis. Sure, not every game is for you. I get that. But I'm somebody who plays a lot of video games. Not just for streaming, but also in my private time. I play tons of different games. And they're ever changing. So I have a lot of games which I'm looking forward to. And I just don't have the time anymore to focus on games which are coming out in 2 years. Like even some of the games which were announced at this press conference where they said like, yeah, this is coming out in 2023. My first reaction was, oh, 2023? Well, then I don't care for now. Because things can still change quite a bit. And I want to wait for that. Or can be delayed. Like I actually found it kind of funny when they showcased Diablo 4, right? And they were like, oh yeah, this is coming out next year. It's coming out, well, till next year, June. And I'm like, Blizzard? Look, I've been playing Blizzard games my whole life. I have been playing Blizzard games since Warcraft 2 and Diablo 1, right? And I was like, look, if there is a king of delay, it is Blizzard. So hold your horses. Hold your horses. But again, yeah, all those games are coming out in like 12 months. One of the biggest showcases, of course, was Starfield. And you know what? Let's talk about Starfield. I think this is a pretty good point to just talk a little bit about what we have seen in Starfield. And I saw a lot of people saying afterwards, like, oh gosh, this looks like a Bethesda game. Oh my god, this is Skyrim in space. This is Fallout in space. I think even the weapon they showed, the last gun, was actually from Fallout 4. And I was like, wow, you reused that model, huh? But a lot of people were like, yeah, oh my god, this looks like another Bethesda game. Oh no, Fallout in space. I'm like, yeah, duh. Like, seriously, what do you have expected here? What did you expect is happening? Yeah, I thought it's because it's a new IP, they're trying something completely new. Maybe they do. Maybe it is different enough. Like, keep in mind, we have only seen, what, like 10 minutes of gameplay in total? And a lot of people pointed out that the fighting in Starfield wasn't that great. I was like, yeah, but was the fighting really like one of the strengths Bethesda had with Fallout and Skyrim, or any Elder Scrolls really? Like, even if I'm looking back at my Morrowind and Oblivion days, I never remember the combat. Because the RPG mechanics were really, really good. Right? So, yeah, like, what I saw, like, I admit, the first part of the presentation where they only showed the fighting and all that didn't really win me over. I will be honest. It looked generic. It looked like whatever. And they didn't won me over with that presentation. But when they started to showcase like the modding, that you can build your own outposts, that you can build your own spaceship, and yeah, the flying will be super wonky and crazy stuff will happen. We will probably have tons of bugs, and yeah, it will be a Bethesda release. But from what they have shown then, that looked really cool. I'm also like a huge fan of exploration. Like if there's one thing about Bethesda games, I was never in for the story. I was never playing Bethesda games to get like something out of the story. I think the only story I have ever finished was Fallout 4 and Oblivion. Oblivion was alright, wasn't anything special. And Fallout 4, well, let's not talk about that, shall we? That was kind of horrid. And welcome in, folks, for all the people who are joining us for the first episode of the podcast. Welcome in. But yeah, it's like what I saw looked good. But Mo, it looked like No Man's Sky. Yeah, it did. But that's okay. Because like No Man's Sky became pretty awesome, and why not learn from them and take ideas from them? I mean, gosh, that's what the video game industry is doing for decades. They're looking at successful games, look at the things which work, take them and put them into their own games. They've always done that, and they will continue doing it so. This is why something which happened, I think, 2 years ago or last year, where, if you have missed it, Warner Brothers has announced that they basically trademarked the Nemesis system from the Lord of the Rings games. I was very much against that. That is a very, very bad idea, and they set a very bad precedent. Thankfully, nobody really jumped on the bandwagon. But when I first heard that they are now like licensing, trademarking and all that, the whole concept and how the Nemesis system works in their game, there was the moment where I was like, ooh, no. You don't do that. You don't do that in the gaming industry. Like, that is a very bad thing to do. So, yeah, my point here is, yes, the gaming industry thrives on taking ideas from other games and using it in their games. So, Starfield looked alright for me. Now, the one thing I really want to talk about here is, so I saw a lot of people pointing out on Starfield that the performance was ass. And first of all, yeah, as expected, welcome to a Bethesda game. Second, I would have been more concerned if this game would have come out in November. It does not come out in November. It's coming out next year at some point. And we don't have a release date anymore. So please excuse me here when I'm a little bit more relaxed on that. Was the frame rate ass? Yeah. Did they use a lot of cuts? Did a lot of stuff kind of janky? Yeah. Again, if they would have sticked to the November release date, I would have been more concerned about it. Now? Not really. No, not really. Like, look, I've been playing Bethesda games since Daggerfall? I think since Daggerfall. No, Morrowind. I did play Daggerfall later then, but I started with Morrowind. And yes, Fallout 76 destroyed a lot of goodwill, because in my opinion they just pushed it too far. But in this case, that they actually postponed the game shows me that they are aware of issues. And again, like the rumors has it that it was actually not delayed from Bethesda, but actually by Xbox. That the high-ups at Xbox were seeing the product, they were happy with the product, but they were not happy with the performance and bugs and whatnot, and they were like, hey folks, take your time. yes, I know we put a release date out there, but take your time. And that's apparently why they delayed it. Yes, for everyone asking what a fake exclusive it is, we will talk about that a little bit later in the show, because that is our first big topic of unraveling the gaming industry. So we will get to that. But I think all in all, the Xbox showcase was alright. The one thing which really didn't faze me was Redfall. I would have loved to see more of Redfall as the game. Like, sure, people running around with guns, shooting vampires, it's a co-op shooter. Sure, it's yeah, I got that. I got that actually the first time when they showed it last year with the CGI trailer. Like, it was pretty much like a given at that point. And I would have loved to see more details, which they didn't do. So I assume they would do this on a later date. But I think the Xbox showcase was alright. I think the Xbox showcase was alright. Was definitely the most gameplay showcase out there, very organized, and I don't really have much to complain about, right? Like this year, unfortunately, we had a lot of showcases which they didn't necessarily have to do. Like yesterday, the Capcom showcase. Thankfully, I didn't stream it. And by the way, I will also not stream the Xbox Extended Showcase today. Won't do that because they just have interviews. But like the Capcom showcase yesterday was mostly showing trailers and like talking about the things which we already knew. And yeah, it wasn't really interesting. This again, as I said, the worst one was the PC gaming showcase. Please, PC games, don't do this again. Don't do this again. Like, you don't have to fill a 2-hour showcase with interviews. I think the showcase would have been okay if they mostly would have showed just gameplay. Just trailers, just games, and everyone would have been okay with it. But this whole thing of 10, 15 minutes interviews of games we have sometimes not even seen. No. Just no. Don't do that, please. Just don't. My personal highlight. What was my personal highlight of all the showcases? I think Starfield was. I looked forward to it. But my personal highlight, actually, and I cannot believe I will say this here right now because I'm highly conflicted still, was Diablo 4. Like, I released a video this morning where I talked about that Diablo 4 is relatively close to Lost Ark. And, well, it feels at least as if they are relatively close to what Lost Ark is doing now. And I'm kind of cool with that. I want to see how they can push Diablo forward, and it looked really good. I love the gore, I love the graphics, animations look fantastic. Like, again, Diablo 4 looks actually really good. It really does. Now, I'm highly conflicted with all the bullshit Blizzard has been pulling and Activision has been pulling and all that. Really, really hope that when Microsoft is buying them finally, that they are cleaning house. They have already announced today. I only have looked it up briefly, but they announced today that Microsoft in general is now pushing more for unions and union neutrality, that they will definitely not interfere with anything, and encouraging people basically to form unions at that point. I was like, oh wow, look at that. So that's pretty neat. So it seems like that Microsoft does another transformation right now, and that's good. That's good. I mean, they have announced, I think last week or something, that the union at Raven Software, one of the developers at Activision who do Call of Duty, that they're actually recognizing the union, and that they are like, yeah, no, like when they will become part of Microsoft, then yes, this union has like all the things, like they're allowed to do that. So that's good. That's good. Like they're at least doing something. If you're looking at Activision, how hard they have been fighting the unionization of Raven. And even after the union came together, they were like, oh god, you unionized. Oh no, you idiots. That was such a bad choice. You know, it's like, oh god. It's, yeah. So I'm still kind of conflicted about Diablo 4, but I'm glad. I'm glad that that something is happening. Oh yeah, because this is running in the background right now. One of the games which was announced is Ara History Untold, and I posted some screenshots a few days ago because they only showed a weird cinematic trailer, right? Like how history can change. And it looks really interesting gameplay wise. They only have a few screenshots. Don't really want to make it a focus point here on the podcast. But yeah, it seems like it's a turn-based city builder, which a lot of like civilization things where you are going through the ages as a city builder. Like it looks really cool. Like they had some really interesting stuff there where it was like, why didn't you show anything? I know turn-based games can be a bit boring to showcase, but you could have just showed us like a briefly trailer of like maybe 20 seconds or so. That would have been nice. But yeah, Ara is definitely a game I would check out for sure. Looks pretty interesting. What was the biggest L, so to speak, at the showcases? Let me think. What was the biggest letdown? The biggest letdown. I think it was actually Redfall. I know it sounds weird, but I think they didn't do a pretty good showcase of it. Like for me, Redfall was probably the biggest letdown a bit, because I would have loved to see more of what the hell you were doing, and instead we saw a generic, here's a person with a shotgun running around a little bit, then pew pew happens, and that was it. Right? There was one of the moments where I was like, please give me more. Please. Something like that. If we had to go with the summer game fest, the biggest win, the Callisto Protocol. Like the biggest win for me was actually the Callisto Protocol. Like holy moly. I know it's literally Dead Space without the IP, and it looks like they put so much quality into that game. Like the production value looks so high in the Callisto Protocol. Really, really hyped for it. Like the Callisto Protocol will probably be awesome. They had some frame issues here and there. I hope they can figure that out. Maybe they showed it on 4K and ray tracing on and something. You know how that can end. Don't play on 4K and ray tracing on. That never ends well for any PC. Even nowadays, it's still pretty rough. But yeah, Callisto Protocol definitely the big whoa. And I think the biggest letdown of the Summer Game Festival was The Last of Us. I I will still be honest. I haven't played The Last of Us Part One or the first one because never get to that point, right? And so I'm kind of happy that it is finally coming to PC. Like, cool. The Last of Us coming. Hey, I can finally play that, and maybe at some point I can play the second one. Awesome. But why it was such a letdown? It didn't need that. It didn't. I'm so sorry, Sony. I know why you were doing it. Like the first Last of Us, well, I think Last of Us 2 only I'm saying only sold 10 million copies. But for Sony, that's not a lot. Like, keep in mind, those are basically like premium first party titles where Sony want to see at least like 15, 20, 30 million sales. And so what Sony is trying to do right now, they're trying to push their games through PC, through movies, through TV shows. They're trying to reach as many people as possible so that in the end, they will go and buy those first party premium titles, right? Yeah, I know that people say only 10 millions. Yeah, like I get it. I know it sounds hilarious when I say that, but this is how Sony sees it. For Sony, 10 million copies is not the goal they have. Like you see Forza here with, just in the background, with 20 million players. You see Sea of Thieves coming up with 30 million players. And yeah, of course, those are multiplayer games. Those are games being directly on Game Pass. But it doesn't really matter because for Xbox, great metrics, and metrics are important for investors. Yes, they do matter for them. I know it's shitty, but it is what it is. And more importantly, that still makes them money. Like, keep in mind, Forza, wonderful example, even if you're playing it on Game Pass, that's still money they're making from you. And B, a lot of the DLC / microtransactions in the game are not covered by the Game Pass. So, yes, even though you might just play the game with Game Pass, there will probably be a good chance that there are people who are actually still investing more money into this game. And you can see it on Steam, by the way. Every week, there are at least like 2 or 3 Microsoft games in the top 10 of the most top sellers. And for Sony, they have to make sure that people see their games, that people play them, because they want to reach more people. That's their big goal. So I totally understand why they remake The Last of Us, right? But I don't like it. Because we had Last of Us coming out on PlayStation 3, then it was remastered for PlayStation 4, and it looks still pretty good. Like, it looks still pretty good if you were looking at the remaster. Like, it's more than just an upscaling. They actually did some work with the remaster, and it still looks good. And in my opinion, it would have been completely fine if they would have just brought the remaster to PC and all the other consoles again. But no, they completely opted into making a remake. And it's like, You you have so many games in your portfolio, PlayStation, which really deserve the remake, and you choose The Last of Us. Why they are doing this? Well, because the TV show on HBO is coming out soon. And I think the PlayStation release of The Last of Us will happen at the same time when the HBO TV show starts. Coincidence? I don't think so. Remember those old days when you were going to the cinema and you would had like on your way to the cinema or when you left the cinema, you would see like some electronic store selling you like those movie games, which were mostly pretty shit, let's be honest. But a lot of people bought those because they just watched the movie. The movie was amazing, and their thought was, hey, maybe the video game is as amazing as the movie I just watched. It sold copies. Like, it was actually a very good way of making a quick buck. And I wouldn't be surprised if PlayStation is also like aiming here at the same goal in the end. Right? But yeah, I don't think that The Last of Us needed a remake. I will be honest. Don't see that. There would have been other games I would have loved to see them focusing on, and they did not. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, all in all, to wrap it up, E3, not E3 2022 was alright. It seems like a lot of games got delayed into 2023. Like if I would open up my release calendar right now, there are not a lot of games I'm looking too much forward to in 2022. Whereas in 2023, there seems to be a lot of stuff going on. I hope we don't have the same situation like we had this year, where like February, March, we had those release over release over release, and to top it all, we had an Elden Ring, right? But we had so many releases that in the end, it was just too much. And some even postponed because of it. So I'm hoping we are not seeing that 10 times worse next year. That would be neat. Yeah. But yeah, so far it was a decent showcase. I think there was something for everyone. And we still get some things here and there. There is a rumor that apparently good old Nintendo will have a huge showcase by the end of the month. And we will, of course, watch that together if that is the case. Yeah. But with that said, let's jump into our big topic of the day, the fake exclusives, and unraveling the gaming industry. So what is a fake exclusive? Fake exclusive seems to be something new. It's a term I coined. It's not an official term yet. I hope so at some point. But the TLDR of fake exclusives is basically creating the impression that the game you are seeing right now is an exclusive to the platform, even though it isn't. And that fake exclusivity has multiple forms. It's not as cut and dry as you might think, and it's not as obvious as you might think. And it's sometimes relatively tough to spot, and it seems like that everyone, Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, is ramping up the whole idea of hiding the fact that the game is coming out to other platforms. And it gets really shitty. So we will talk about multiple examples here, which basically happened, and they're all a little bit different, but in the end, they are suggesting that the game is exclusive to the platform you are gaming on, right? And like one of the things we see a lot, Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, is when they're showcasing a trailer and they're not telling you that this game is coming to other platforms, right? They're not mentioning it. And then you're going online, you go to the website, or you go to the Twitter account or whatever, or to like a gaming website, and then you realize, the game is also coming out on my platform. Okay, cool. Right? This is like the most common thing we are seeing when it comes to fake exclusives, and it already annoys me. I get it, you don't want to really talk about the other platforms. You don't want to do that because they're your competitor and you want to pretend that they don't exist, which is dumb, but okay. And if we would only have that, then I would say, yeah, that's pretty annoying, but it's still manageable. Unfortunately, in the last few months and in the last year, it got worse. It got worse. So you might say, hey, wait a second, Mo, wait a second. At least Xbox is telling people this is a timed exclusive, or this is a release exclusive. So the people know that the game is probably coming out like a year or half a year later on the other consoles. Sony is not even doing that. Right? Like Sony is not even doing that anymore. They will basically pretend as if the game will be exclusive forever, and then after a year or so we found out, oh, it isn't. I think good old Persona 5 is a wonderful example. So from what we have heard from Japanese channels is the Persona 5 actually only had an exclusivity for a year, and the same does go for Persona 5 Royale, right? So Sony only had the exclusive rights on that. And they could have ported Persona 5 before that, but they wanted to wait for Royale. And like it was all a little bit complicated, but from what we have seen, it's like Microsoft could have apparently gotten Persona 5 sooner, but Atlus was just like, nah, as long as you're not paying us, I don't really see us porting this to Xbox or any other platform. You know, Atlus is a little bit weird and how they're doing it, but yeah. So that's not really a fake exclusive. It's just a lot of like weirdness going together. But let me give you an example of fake exclusive. And I think Xbox just pushed it to the next level. On the Xbox showcase, yes, they always showed like, this is a timed exclusive, or this is a console exclusive, or something like that, right? But they also sometimes had some games in between those exclusives which didn't say that, but you might have missed it, right? So they already tried to make it look like as if the game you have been watching might be a console launch exclusive, at least, even though it isn't. But they pushed it further. They showed a game called Wo Lang Fallen Dynasty, which is from Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja. And then Phil Spencer came on the stage, had a grand talk about like how it is important to bring more Japanese game to the Xbox platform, how they're working together with Team Ninja because they have brought amazing games to the Xbox in the past. And yeah, this game is coming to Xbox next year. And people were, of course, immediately looking online to see if the game is also coming to PlayStation, and it doesn't. So you might think, oh, damn, okay, so this is an exclusive. No, it's not. There was a press release of Koei Tecmo which would announce that the game is also coming to PlayStation. But Xbox put an embargo on their press release for 2 days after the trailer. For 2 days after the trailer, nobody was allowed to mention that the game is also coming to PlayStation. And that's the moment where I have to say, whoa, hold on here. So now we are putting embargoes on like announcement if the game is coming to another platform? That is a dick move. Because you know exactly what you try to do with this. This is not one of those, well, we try to be a little bit sneaky here and try to hide the fact. Like, no. This was full on, let's pretend that this new Team Ninja Koei Tecmo game will be an Xbox exclusive. And that you only covered this for 2 days shows it even more. Because you know how people, are watching the reactions, they are watching like the videos, the trailers, and then after 2 days, the interest is waning, and people move on to the next thing, whatever, right? But at that moment, it's already ingrained in their mind that yes, this is an Xbox exclusive. And it isn't. It's coming to PlayStation. And I was like, wow, that's pretty shit. But it's not just that. Let me give you another example which happened right after the announcement of the game, when they not showcase, but when they announced the Kojima project, right? Kojima Productions and Hideo Kojima, where they in a short video explain to people that they are now working together with Xbox and that they're working on a game they always wanted to make, yada 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 yada. And a lot of people online, I even saw some journalists going like, wait, what? What is Kojima doing there? Wait, no, Kojima Productions is owned by PlayStation. What is he doing there? It even did go so far that Kojima Productions had to put out a statement a day after explaining to people that, hey, me and PlayStation, we are still best buddies, we are still doing stuff together, and we are still best friends. Like, this is just a different project because we are an independent studio. But you can see that people believed that PlayStation is owning Kojima Productions. And of course, PlayStation has never tried to tell anyone anything else. Right? It's this, let's keep up the illusion that Kojima Production is part of PlayStation. Where it's not. Yes, Sony has probably helped Kojima to get like the new place. We know that they actually did help with some of the with the healthcare and stuff in Japan. Like that's one of the things I think Kojima itself even explained. So they definitely did help to kickstart Kojima Productions. There is no question about it. But Kojima Productions is an independent studio. And people believe that it is part of PlayStation. And PlayStation has never put out a statement to say, no, like they're not. Like, stop thinking that. Because it helps them. Speaking of PlayStation, let me give you another example of how fake exclusives can be damaging to the games and to the developers of said games. So last year, I played a game on my channel. I was live streaming it. And I was putting PC into my title. And I had literally multiple people coming in saying, wait a second. PC? No. This game is a PlayStation exclusive. How do you play this on PC? Like, do you use an emulator? Is there a PlayStation 5 emulator? Like, how are you doing this? I was like, no, I just bought it for PC. What? But how? And the game I'm talking about was Kena, Bridges of Spirit. Spirit of Bridges? I was Kena. You know what I mean. And a lot of people believed that this game was a PlayStation exclusive. It even did go so far that on Twitter, when people ask like PlayStation, hey, the game is out yet, I have some people seeing this playing on PC. Is this out on PC? And PlayStation would always give this legalese answer of the best experience to experience Kena is on the PlayStation 5, which you can now buy on PlayStationStore.com, yada yada yada. And it's like, just answer the question with yes. Like, stop. And you might say, well, but yeah, you cannot really expect them to mention like another store. Why not? Like, keep in mind, this is also how you damage the developer. The developer of Kena is a small indie studio. So that means if people are asking PlayStation, hey, is this game on a different store? I don't have a PlayStation. I will certainly not buy a PlayStation for this. Like, you have nothing to lose in the first place. Because you already lost like that customer. So why not help out your partner, in this case the indie development studio, and tell the people, yes, it is available on PC as well. They didn't. And I'm pretty sure they lost a good chunk of customers because people believed this would be a PlayStation 5 exclusive and you couldn't play it anywhere else. And that is a big problem. Especially, as I said, for small indie studios who need every unit sold, who need the extra money, who need the selling figures to maybe get another publisher agreement and whatnot, right? Like, not just for the consumer, but also for the developers, I want that Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox are more honest. Yes, you don't have to mention PlayStation. You don't have to mention Xbox. But just write for other systems. Right? Like, just write also arriving for other systems or something like that. Or if it is a timed exclusive, make it clear that the game you are seeing will be a timed exclusives. If you really want to be awesome, you actually also mention how long that timed exclusivity is going. You won't. This is another, conceiving trick they're trying to pull by not telling you how long the exclusivity lasts, so that in the end you think, oh man, they have an exclusivity. What if it lasts for like 2 or 3 years? Oh, I don't want to wait that long. Okay, yeah, no, I will buy the console. Like, my point is, if you have to use those tricks to get people to buy your console, that's not good. Like, especially PlayStation doesn't need that. The same goes for Xbox. I don't think that they need that. Like, they are selling those consoles as they are. They even sell as many because they cannot keep up with production, right? So I just hope that the gaming industry at some point stops with trying to create this illusion of, hey, the game you've just seen here will be an exclusive to our platform. And then if you're looking up on the website, you have to find out, no, it doesn't. And again, especially Xbox, I really, really hope that this backfired, what you just polled with Vo Lang, and that we don't see that in the future. That you were putting an embargo on a press release 2 days after the showcase, which would reveal the fact that the game is also coming to PlayStation. Like, I'm really hoping I don't have to read about that ever again. Because that sucks big time. If everyone starts to do this, like, it would become really messy. Like, every time you have a PlayStation, Nintendo, or Xbox showcase, I now have to look up all the games again, like 2 or 3 days after the announcements, just to see if they are coming to the platform I'm playing on. Like, it doesn't help nobody, and it really creates trust issues. And again, my trust level with publishers in general is not that high. So please don't mess with that too. I would appreciate that. But with that said, we are done with the fake exclusivity topic for this week. Next week we will have, of course, another topic coming up and some more gaming stuff we have to talk about. I think this was a pretty good first podcast. We kept it at about an hour. That's what I'm planning to. Well, I'm not really planning. I just talk and we'll see where it goes. I have topics, right? I have like bullet points I'm going through, but I will just see how long it takes, right? But yeah, I think most episodes will be around an hour, something like that. And yeah, was a good episode. There are a few things I will of course improve over the time. I have to learn about. But we will do this now every Tuesday, and I have to find a time for it, because right now I'm off of my streaming and whatnot, and I'm recording this right now in my streaming time. So maybe I'm combining that. Maybe I'm doing like an evening stream. I have to see. I have to find like a fixed time for the podcast so people can look out for it, right? But again, if you want to listen to the whole podcast ad-free, then you can do that on patreon.com/ChaosMole. There are multiple tiers you can support me with. Then in a few hours, it will also arrive on other podcast stations like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the whole shebang. You can also watch it here on YouTube, of course. The VOD will stay available for everyone. But there will be ads. Like as I said, if you want to get the ad-free experience, you can find it on my Patreon in just a few minutes. And keep also in mind, if you were deciding to support me on the second tier, you will also get early access for the Mole Hall of Fame, where I'm basically covering and talking about the games which were important for me. Yeah, the first game, I can already tell you which we will talk about, is Metal Gear Solid. Yep, that will be the first game we are covering. And then you will get early access to it up to 2 weeks before everybody else is getting it. And I'm looking forward to that. We should have some really nice games to talk about. But yeah, check out my Patreon if you would be so kind. I would appreciate that. And thank you everyone for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do not forget to leave a like and also to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more podcast episodes up here and so on and so forth. I would really appreciate that. We have much more to cover in the next few months, so it's definitely worth it. But again, for everyone else, watching or listening to it, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting me. I hope you enjoyed the first episode. And let me know what you think. Like, write it down below in the comments and let me know. Maybe improvements you want to see or topics you want to see, right? So yeah, let me know. With that said, folks, thank you so much for watching, listening, and I will see you next week with the second episode of the Molehill podcast. Till then, have a good one